All right, good evening. Welcome to the Alaska Airmen's Association. Beautiful afternoon here on Lake Hood. Glad to see so many people here. I think we have a really interesting presentation tonight. Many of you already know each other, but I'll do some introductions briefly so these guys have maximum time to talk. First of all, I want to introduce our president here, Sven Linke. He's our Alaska Airmen's Association president. And I'm John Dolan, I'm the vice president, and I don't see any of the rest of the board here, but that's enough about us. Let's get to the meat of the matter. Dan Billman, recently retired FAA safety program manager, longtime Alaskan, West High graduate, and with his wife Patty owned and operated the Point Lake Lodge at Lake Louise, had air taxi services in Copper River Basin in Hawaii, and Dan's wanted to fly to Russia since the 70s when he flew photo missions near the Iron Curtain. I think most of us are old enough to remember what the Iron Curtain was. Finally, he made it over in 2017. Marshall Severson, also a lifelong Alaskan, graduated from UAA. Greetings, fellow alumnus. Thank you. Retired FAA air traffic safety staff manager, longtime interested in Russia and enjoys flying airplanes. And he's participated in airman flights to Russia in 2001, 2, 4, and 17. So he's got a well-worn path there. And Tandy Wallach is a 42-year Alaskan resident. I think she lied about her age, but she came to the state. She's not old enough to be a 42-year resident.
Thank you.
She has 21 years experience working in airlines, including Icelandic Air, Air France, Western, and Mark Air. She's president of Circumpolar Expeditions, which was founded in 1991. They arrange specialized tour programs, education, and professional exchanges, and provide logistics support for expeditions and film companies in Alaska, Chukotka, and other areas of the Arctic. And they received the Governor's Exporter of the Year award for partnering with Revolution Airways to establish air service between Alaska and Russia. So we have a great group here with a fascinating topic, lots of information. We encourage questions, and I'm going to get out of the way and let them take over.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Marshall, why don't you?
Welcome everybody. The main purpose of this presentation is to talk about what it's actually going to take to get over to Russia, VFR, this coming summer. So, we're recruiting kind of here for people that want to make up their minds whether or not that it's feasible for them, give you enough information to make that decision. So welcome. There's the dates right up there of the planned voyage, and we'll give it a little bit about why those dates are proposed. You already heard about our background. The Russian VFR Bravo 369 route history. It goes from the Little Diomede area over to the west coast and then down to Provideniya. The airman pioneered that route. Mr. Pinone's here. He flew it before there was a Bravo 369. But how many other folks have flown to Russia that we have here? Cool. Yeah. Thank you for your pioneering. So the airmen have a long legacy of establishing the contact with the Russian Far East and flying over there with large groups in the past. And it's been hit or miss for quite a few years. So part of what we're doing here, I'm going to back up a little bit here and talk about, there's a departure from Provideniya. And I've got a video that I could show if you want to see that at some other time. But there is a hump. That hump hasn't changed from when Mr. Pinone was over there. It's rocky and kind of gnarly. If you're flying a Cirrus with wheel pants, that might not be the wisest thing to do. But it's an international airport.
Yeah, I've seen better gravel pits than that.
So this group flight is proposed for one, enjoy the adventure with the fellowship and safety travel multiple aircraft provides, your fellow pilots and folks, because when Dan and I went last, a little over a year and a half ago now, we were it. So it takes, it's better to fly in a larger group, with the support that brings. Not that Dan wasn't a great partner and really skilled and all that kind of stuff. I was real confident to have somebody that's got as much maintenance experience too, but we didn't need any maintenance, thank goodness. So.
But the goodwill thing is the whole thing, and you could, even though there was a language differences, fortunately one of the inspectors had been in Sochi and could speak English well. Anyway, he was really helpful, but we were respectful of these individuals. We did everything they asked, but we had a great time with them, and it's the goodwill is what it's all about.
Absolutely. And it's a rare enough occurrence that you really are an ambassador, civilian ambassador. They're looking at, the folks over there aren't used to seeing Americans, especially Americans, that are non-professional pilots coming in and out of there, just regular people. So it's important to maintain these relationships, we think, and that's why we're volunteering to do this. So I had a slide up there for Tandy a little bit ago, beautiful slide. Actually, I think I'll just go back to it for just a second. But Tandy's going to talk a little bit about the itinerary and that sort of thing, but that picture doesn't do it justice how pretty that terrain is right around Provideniya, and it was shot in June too.
That was June, what, 23rd? And you could ice skate on that, and that was actually a saltwater bay. Wasn't fresh water. That went right, I mean, it may be brackish, but it went out to saltwater. So it is different.
Good evening, my name is Candy Wallach, and thanks for inviting me to be here tonight to speak about your flight over to Chukotka. A little bit about me, I've been running my company for over 25 years now and specializing in the Russian Far East. And primarily now we do a lot of work in Chukotka. My heart is with those guys over in Chukotka. The people that live over there, we have formed lasting friendships. Like Marshall and Dan mentioned, we are ambassadors for goodwill. And it's like I was saying to some of the other people over there that, we have Russia and the U.S. here, we have Putin, we have Trump now, and then we have Chukotka, and we have Alaska, and then on a political frame, yet then we have individual people. And that's who we're dealing with. Of course, we have to get all those permissions, but then when it comes down to it, it's the people-to-people relationship that we're fostering. And this border has been open for years now, but every time there's a political upheaval with Russia and the U.S., they think about shutting that border down. And we go and talk to folks about what devastation that would be for the Alaska Native people with their relatives over on the other side, also for businesses that are working over in that area. So we've been able to keep it open, but what really helps is like you flying over there. That just shows the relationship and the intent that we want to do. So these guys are the pilots, I'm not, and I don't know about airplanes except first class on Alaska Airlines, I like. But I'm the logistics person, so I'm going to be taking care of the land arrangements for you, where you're going to stay, the ground transportation, having somebody pick you up and take you from the airport to where you're going to stay. We have wonderful guides who will greet you, and I'm so excited already that we're thinking about coming back again. Then we've got activities planned in Provideniya. There's a wonderful first-class museum there, and that we would be taking you there too, as well as the history of the community and the town. And then after spending the night there, we're going to be driving to New Chapelino, which is a village by road, but the roads are, it's going to take a while to get there because of the condition of the roads. But we wanted you to see a native village, as we have villages on this side. And so what I like about this kind of adventure is seeing the similarities and then the differences. We have the same ground, same tundra, same trees and all of that, but you can really see the differences because of political powers who are organizing that area. And if you can just go back a bit, like maybe 10,000 years, and just imagine what it was like with just native people on both sides. and then how they came across and met with their relatives, and they continued to go back and forth, back and forth. And then in 1948, Russia implemented a ice wall, really, between Alaska and Russia. And they moved everybody from Big Diomede back to Chukotka, and that was like grandmas and grandpas and their relatives on Little Diomede. They moved them way inside, and then this slowly building this ice wall that we had. And so that wall was around when I came to Alaska, and it did not, like for instance, when I looked that way, I didn't think of Russia at all, even though we're so very, very close. I looked at it as there's a wall there and there's nothing we can do about it. And then in '89, with the friendship flight and all of that, those borders started to melt. And we started to have exchanges back and forth. And in the 80s and 90s, we had a lot of it. But it's been freezing up again. And we don't have that many exchanges. And like Marshall said, you know, the airport there, they don't get a lot of traffic, and particularly from the U.S. So we want to maintain this. We want to continue this border being open and more exchanges. And why I get involved is because tourists, okay, not airmen, but tourists get this map from the Alaska State Tourism Board. And on Alaska, it's park over here. And they look at it, oh, it's just a little jump right over there, a little jump. It's only 50 miles. And they think, oh, it's so easy. I can just go to Alaska and then add on Chukotka. Well, you know, 10,000 years ago, that would have been very easily. But now, you have to get permission, Russian visas, and we'll go into all of that. But that's why people are interested. And we used to have a lot more tourists going back and forth. And I'm hoping that we keep doing it, that we will keep this border open and that we'll have more exchanges going back and forth. So that's my take on it. So.
Super. And
Thank you.
the reason why Tanya's so important to this thing, she did the coordination with the airmen decades ago, and she's really key to the Chukotka entry. It's a closed area. She's got the contacts, in effect, that she can coordinate that, plus all the land arrangements, the stay, the food, the lodging, the tours, the vehicles, the translator, the guide, that sort of thing. So very important. And then, you know, this itinerary here, it's 4 days. There's a lot going on. But there will be time, you know, just to walk around and take in some of the scenes. We didn't put a whole bunch of pictures in this presentation this time, for brevity's sake, but there's plenty of interesting areas. Talked about the translator guide, you know, so there'll be transportation, and that they walk with you everywhere, you know, that you want them to. We're going the wrong way, sorry. So just about group flight responsibilities, this is us, so that we can update you and give you electronic copies of some of the stuff that's up here. You don't have to take any of it tonight, that's the handouts here. But we'll get out electronic versions too. There's contact information, that sort of thing. We can just click on the Word document rather than trying to retype it in. Another thing that's important to know about is the Russian AIP, Airmen's Information Manual. And that is available online. Years ago when we were going over there, it was a real bear to get a hold of. People were trading, you know, outdated copies of it and stuff, but now it's kept up and online for free. It's huge to get through it. We'll help with that on maneuvering through it. And we'll have a little booklet out, a pamphlet on some of these items. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I just remember when I was a kid, I flew for the government in support of firefighting and also some photogrammetry. And near, you know, even close to Nome or Tin City, Wales, you could see the Russian mainland over there. And I always, I mean, it was just a dream. It's right there. There's Eurasia, you know. And the first time I tried to go, I got right to Botany, and I had just updated my Garmin 195 back in the day, and in doing so, it was North America only. It wouldn't change at Botany. It just went poof. So I knew it wouldn't be wise for me to wander around like a dog in the meat house trying to get down there. And so I wasn't able to go. But this time when, in 2017, when Marshall and I went, the weather was just perfect across there, and it was hard to beat. It is cooler over there, as you noticed, the snow to sea level and the ice. I'm sure their summer is a little shorter than on the U.S. side, but it was beautiful. I mean, it was just really spectacular to be able to see it.
Are those checkpoints, are they VORs or are they just lat longs?
Lat longs. Yeah.
And that needs a little updating, that map does. By the way, we have Mr. Andy McClure here from Flight Service. He's the guy that I actually worked in Flight Service before, and so I worked on this type of thing years ago. Now Andy's doing a lot of it and getting with the Russians. He brought a letter of agreement here that's current that I actually signed and negotiated, but it needs to be updated. And so anything we can do to help progress that along too, we'd like to help on that. But the bottom line is that the border, to show the demand to go across, demand's probably the wrong word, but to show the interest to go across is very important to keep these intergovernmental contacts and support up to. So anything you want to say right now, Andy?
Just about the graphic there, I brought several copies of it if people want them. My printer shifted in the middle of printing it, so some of them are really long pieces of paper and you can take lots of notes on them. The problem with the graphic and with this letter of agreement that I brought with me is that they need updating. That mentions Lavrentiya. There is virtually nothing at Lavrentiya at the moment. No tower, no NDB that I'm aware of. Pretty much on your own. So they're allowing us to still use the same letter of agreement that describes the procedures and everything, even though they have said that from their point of view, there is no letter of agreement because it was with a non-existent facility. Yeah, and yet I took over from Marshall and his job 3 years ago, started working on this. There has been zero movement on that LOA since I took the position 3 years ago. None.
But Andy, just so that we don't get the total impression of that too, is that the Russian air traffic, I mean, I was just in contact with the Russian air traffic people in the last couple of days. So
Yeah.
they're really, there should be an operational letter of agreement that's proper and updated. But in the meantime, just like we did last year, is that, we called up a Notcher Center and we got cleared in. But I mean, there's permissions involved, that sort of thing, ICAO flight plans, the whole 9 yards, so that, to make it work. But
Yeah.
part of this process too is demonstrating that the border's still open and that we can fly the route. So there's, I don't have any doubts that it's gonna work unless there's some kind of huge diplomatic issue going on.
And that's part of what's going on there. I think the negotiations between the Americans on this side and the Russians on that side are subject to political whim, if you will. Marshall was lucky enough and smart enough to have personal relationships with a lot of those folks, and I think that's part of the reason, probably a major part of the reason why this is still possible. The good news also is that Nome Flight Service, where you'll be departing from, has a good handle on the procedures, and it all still works.
One thing, at Lavrentiya, used to have a tower that we would ask permission at Botany to enter Russia. Well, it was difficult for them sometimes to always have English speaker controllers there. You know, you'd think they would, but they didn't have much international travel or whatever. So now with communications going through a Nadir, it works really well. But believe me, there's still a lot at Laurentia. I wouldn't even want to guess what's down there.
Well, and just to make clear too, that Aeroflot has flights all the time into Laurentia,
Yeah.
and helicopters going in and there, so, you know, there is an airport there, so.
Yeah,
It's not an international airport, even though it's closer. I mean, I would love to fly into Laurentia personally, but you first got to get to Provideniya and clear customs, and then it's relatively, well, I don't know who's flown a civil aircraft from American civil aircraft in the last 10 years into Laurentia.
I think it's pretty secure. I think there's submarine base and stuff there.
Right, they were asking, I mean, when we went over there in the early 2000s even, they were real concerned about even overflying Laurentia. It's like, well, this is a standard route. You know, security would ask questions. Yes, ma'am?
Do we need visas?
Yes, we will get to that here, but yeah, you need a permit, you need a lot of permissions. Just from the technical aspect of it here, you wanna go over this real quick?
Well, it's a VFR route and no Russian navigator required. And it's kind of unusual because in the Russian Far East, there wasn't a lot of VFR flight. It was all military or IFR transport category aircraft. So it's about 60 miles across there from the Wales side out by the Diomedes and then over to the mainland, and 270 nautical miles. And it was unusual. When we got to Provideniya, there's a whole group of security and border people, you know, and they were marshaling us in like we were a 747 or something. We're in a 172. And anyway, as they start marching out towards the airplane, I get a call, and it's my son on AT&T cell phone. I said, bad timing, I'll call you later. And that was unusual, you know, that we had telecommunications there. And then these folks were very nice to us, but they were real stern doing their job, you know. And we just did everything they asked. And then at the end, when we came back to fly away, then I started to shake the first hands and they wanted hugs. So then it was hugs. So that was the goodwill part that really made it seem worthwhile, and the connections that you have with those folks. And is the letter on there from?
Yes.
From, yeah.
We'll have a shot of that.
Anyway,
Just recap a little bit. It's a VFR route. It's 1,500 meters to 3,000 meters is the corridor height. So that's 5,000 to 10,000 feet. So if you stick to, you know, the forecasted minimum and all that, it's going to be a nice, comfortable flight if you have the weather, which, you know, that's the idea, is to fly VFR. It's 270 nautical miles. You got about, and I'm going to round up, but about 20 miles to the Diomedes, and then about 40 miles from the Diomedes to the western approach of the mainland. So you're almost within gliding distance, depending on how high you can get. And I'll leave it that right now, but it's also 20 hours ahead over there. So you're going in, if you basically plan on leaving about noon to 1 p.m. on Sunday, which is actually Monday morning at 8 a.m. in Provideniya. The tower's only open Mondays through Fridays, their time and dates. So you leave on a Sunday, which is a Monday, and then you got 4 days plus an extra day if needed, if the weather changes on you. And then you're stuck for the weekend after that, because there's no movement once the tower closes on the weekend. There's the airport that was taken in June of 2017. You can't see the hump too well in there, but it's on the approach end going to the south.
and the village is across the bay, right along the hillside over there.
Somewhat gnarly. There was still ice on the lake there can see on the south end. And we did it in 172 with the ox tank for gas, carried all.
Yeah, that little airplane has a 18-gallon O&N baggage tank that was handy. It allowed us to handle that flight well without relying on fuel over there.
Yep.
So did you guys transfer fuel from that into when you were in Provideniya?
We,
Back to your mains.
I think we still had enough in the wings that we put all the fuel into the ox tank because we had used it.
We carried,
Then in flight, we transferred.
we carried 15 extra gallons too, besides what's in the ox tank. Ox tank's 18, but we have plenty of gas, lots of gas. But, you know, when I talked about before about this being a rare occurrence, there's still a lot of added value that you're gonna be a part of. Just when I say, you know, operating and doing it, there's a lot of unknowns and things people wanna know about. First one's keeping the border open. And then we did, you know, Andy needs to get feedback on how things go on both sides. As far as the operations go, I mean, if we, we'd let Andy know if we call up and we don't get a clearance or something, but, you know, we don't anticipate that. If we've got a flight permission, you're essentially good to go. The WAC charts, as probably most of you know, were essentially all phased out. We saw that as a big problem. So working with the Airmen, with AOPA, and with the Charting Forum in DC, within the last year, we got them to reinstate the Russian Far East to Provideniya on the Nome Sectional. So you should be able to navigate this year using your whatever navigation, electronic navigation you're going to use, and you know, not go to terrain or anything on the other side there. If you like to use a sectional to navigate on electronically, that should be back for you. And we did work, and when I say work, everything we do, we haven't been paid for anything, but we worked with Spot and Global Star because they had a big gap, and so over the Bering Sea there, it didn't transition the Spot device, the one that the emergency device that you hit the button and hopefully get rescued, or at least people know that you've got a problem. There was a big gap there that was because Wasilla has an Earth station for Global Star. And then there's one over in Korea, which we really didn't know about, but there was a problem transitioning the signals. So that was identified. They've been very good on working with us on that.
Marshall, what about the inReach? Is it, you know anything about it working over there?
Yeah, the inReach worked fine. I can show you the tracks that actually on the front of this thing, we had the inReach.
On that early slide, it showed, they're, what are those 3-minute spots? Or 3-minute?
Well, yeah, they're
or 5-minute?
I think they've got 2.5. It's what you pay for, you know.
Yeah.
But they work fine. I mean, a lot of them on the map that we put out to the public here, it did not show every hit because there's just too many of them. You know, at the scale, it just shows hits, but I didn't see any interruptions in the, and that's Iridium satellite too. So this is what Danny was talking about here. If you want to.
Well, I just think it was really cool that Marshall got this letter from the Victor Chukotka, and he is in Magadan, as I recall, right? And he's kind of the director of the Far East Aviation. And we saw a couple of different things that were real important. He seemed to be open for us to, in the future, to fly VFR and actually even choose our own route, like true VFR, from Provideniya to Nadir. And then even on our way back, I don't know, maybe we'll have time to show that slide again, but they had us cut the corner. They said we could just cut the corner right from Provideniya and go to Botany, and we said, don't really want to fly over that much water. But we did go, if you notice the different route there, we did go to the kind of the point of the peninsula, or just offshore of Laurentia, and then to the Botanies. or to the Diomede and then over. So they're getting more, let's say VFR friendly. And I think that was really, I think they've known Marshall and myself a long time. I think they find some comfort in us, so.
So just a comment here, there's the town, and you'd be staying in one of the buildings there. That's Igor, former mayor, museum manager, that sort of thing. But they do sell ivory over there, but because Tandy wanted to make sure everybody knows, because of the Marine Mammal Act, you don't want to, we would not recommend you buy any because it's going to be a customs nightmare. I also, you know, when we talk about that four-tusked walrus, you guys that have been over there probably saw that four-tusked walrus in the museum.
Just drink the vodka, don't drink the water.
Yeah, don't drink the water. It's like there was a nuclear sub-base over there, I'm not saying anything.
Marshall, can I just point out something? In your earlier shot, you showed the airport runway, and then this is across the way. Now, you have to drive all the way around to get to Provideniya. It takes probably about an hour to get there. But on this side is where the military base was during the Cold War and all of that. And they still were there up until maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. And then they moved the military people into Provideniya. So when I talk to tourists who are going over there on an adventure kind of a trip, I really try and talk with them a lot that when you land at the airport there and you're driving into Provideniya, it's like you're driving into bombed out Bosnia, okay? And you'll see all of this military stuff, rusty buildings collapsing and everything, and it really scares little blue-haired ladies from Florida when they see that kind of stuff, you know, and then they get in here, and then they still see a lot of the same kind of stuff. But these buildings, the ones that are colored, have been refurbished apartments by the Governor Abramovich, who was governor some years ago. So you'll see that kind of stuff, but it'll be warm, it'll be safe food. So, but don't be shocked when you see bombed out Bosnia.
Okay, just, I don't know why it's doing that, sorry about that. So Russian weather, you can get it. When we went over there before, there was a problem with getting it online, but the Russians went over backwards with Ross Hydromet and were texting it. They had some kind of a site set up, but we couldn't get enough bandwidth to get to it. But we got what we needed. We had it, which those who've been over there before, you know, the fail-safe is you call the tower in Provideniya and get the weather. So I mean, it's there.
What'd they tell you? The weather's good, come on over.
Not this time, the previous time, that's exactly what
The weather's good.
Come on over. So we're gonna get into safety, and then we get into some costs and that sort of thing, because we're running behind what we.
Yeah, I'll try to go over that kind of briefly, but the big thing about this is, yes, we're gonna fly over a lot of water, but let's just do it as safely as possible. We carried a little, Marshall kept lifting that thing thinking, wow, that's heavy, but it's about a 28-pound, 5-man raft, about so big, but, and it's an automatic, pull the tether, get it out of the airplane, pull the tether, and it's home. And then we also wore wetsuits. We just keep them down off our shoulders, but we had wetsuits that if we had an engine failure over the water, we would have time to don those suits. And then it's real important to have 406 ELTs, of course, and personal EPIRBs. And Marshall is real aware of this ESAR system. Maybe you could say a word or two about that. I think it's real important. If flight service can act as your grandma or your wife if they're not home, and make sure that you are searched quickly.
I think you said pretty good. Andy, can you do that in 1 minute?
Okay, ESRS, or if you want to call it ESARS, that works for us too. Primarily designed for VFR aircraft using a small satellite tracker like InReach, Spot, or Spider Tracks. If you go through us, add it to your master flight plan, set it up so that flight service gets notified if you push that SOS button, then we will do everything in our power to make sure people get the word just as fast as possible.
And I've got a lot of confidence in that system personally, having worked with it and that sort of thing. And I'd rather have flight service getting my SOS. They're 24/7. That's their jobs, is to look for lost airplanes. They know how to get a hold of the Russians immediately, that sort of thing. Whether I don't anticipate any major delay or something if there was an incident.
Right.
It's just a real fail-safe. I mean, they do flight plans, that sort of thing, day in, day out. That's their bread and butter. Yeah.
Does that work for first-gen spot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you saw the coverage issue though we got over there though.
Right.
You know, so be aware of that. That's all I can say about that right now.
Another question in the back?
Yeah, since we're gonna be crossing an ADIS and it's still 2019, I assume we won't need ADS-B transponders for this, just regular mode S, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Correct.
And it will require big numbers on the airplane because we're crossing the ADIS.
I would say look at your FRs real close. If you saw my airplane, it doesn't have big numbers.
Okay.
That's probably the best that I could tell you. Check the FARs because your situation depends on when it got painted and that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
But there's always duct tape if you've got a concern. And I would just say this about customs. I don't know how much time we'll have to talk about customs, but customs in Nome, I couldn't think of a better federal employee than the director up there. He's concerned with crime, not with necessarily putting a check in each box.
Okay, and when the airplanes are at the airport, will we have security at the airport or not?
Have to do what now?
Will there be somebody providing security for the planes at the
At
airport?
Provideniya, yeah, they have guards and you pay for it too.
Boy, extra.
That's the other part.
Yeah.
And the DVFR codes, part of, with getting with Nome Flight Services, they give you DVFR codes, and on the way out, as soon as you climb out, you can actually talk to Nome through Gamble, RCO. And
You
can
mean
swap
leaving
them
out of Provideniya?
out of Provideniya, yeah.
Yeah, that was nice. As soon as we were off the ground about 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet, we could talk to no one. So the communications between the cell phone, I did get back to my son too and called him back on the cell phone. It worked perfect. And so had a visit with him, but I was pretty amazed that it worked there.
But the cell phone's international rates, right?
I evidently,
You had a big bill when you got home or not?
I don't recall it. It did. So.
Marshall Severson said.
Mine didn't work over there, so. Yes, sir.
Any issue with the Russians with us bringing satellite phones?
I would just research that a little bit and see what you can find out. I think there's still some issues with satellite phones, but I mean, we've got all kinds of trackers. I mean, we have GPSs and
Right.
you name it.
The
So it's,
GPSs are okay now if you're gonna use a GPS to navigate with.
they appear to be.
Yeah.
I know I'm hedging things, but I mean, some of this stuff is how you deal with people too.
One year, Marshall and I were going to fly, and we were hoping to go on to a nod year, and we had red passports because we were both FAA employees. And then they got real nervous. They wanted equipment, serial numbers, model numbers of all the equipment. Do you remember that? They got really funny about it, but
Petra, did you have a question
I
or
was
comment?
wondering, are you allowed to bring phones in Lakeview town? Because in 2003, we had to leave the phones in the
they
airport.
carried
didn't
his.
say. They never said anything about, and we had our phones with us, our personal cell phones, and they didn't say.
I think Tanny has a comment.
Yes, I mean, it waivers, but last time I was over there and these guys were over there, cell phones were fine to go in. AT&T worked, and I had AT&T, and also messaging worked. iMessaging was working, and all of a sudden pops up there. So you never know, but I don't see any problem with the satellite phone. I mean, cell phones, satellite phones, we've been able to take some in with our clients. But research it, you know, you never know what the Russians officially say, right?
Tell
Well,
them
that's
about
the thing
it.
is that,
anyway.
that if you're above board and, you know, you're compliant with their questions, I mean, a lot of you in here have been experienced with this, but, you know, they wanted to go through all my inspection panels and all that stuff, so I opened up some, you know, covers and all that, but I didn't open up inspection windows and that sort of thing. But that seemed to satisfy me. And they were taking pictures inside of my engine cowling and that sort of thing. And everybody had a smartphone. And they all took pictures, but as soon as he asked to take a picture, they said, no. So, you know, it's not always...
It's a one-way street.
Yeah,
As far
you
as-
don't wanna take pictures at the airport and with the border guards who come to the plane with the rifles.
They look so cool though. in
Well,
that
and the
uniform.
high heels. That
Yeah,
the
they were
gals are-
groovy.
So you don't wanna do that. I just also wanna mention, because I get just asked constantly about drones. I've never been able to take a drone over there, so I wouldn't bring a drone, sneak it or anything like that, so.
I'll leave mine home this time. There's some very important stuff here I want to make sure that we go over. Flight plan handling. Back years past, the airmen actually coordinated on the flight plan handling, that sort of thing. I've done my own, but it's not possible to do that anymore. You have to have a CETA address, basically, and you know, as a non-commercial flyer, I don't have any access to that. So you got to go through a flight plan handler, which is basically a commercial dispatch type outfit that takes care of all your permissions, flight plans. Although we file our own flight plans, but they provide all those services. They also take care of all the charges, and I'd say really take care of them. But so you're paying extra besides what the air traffic fees are. You know, that's kind of the way it is. I mean, so it's relatively the prices went down on the actual Russian air traffic fees compared to the early 2000s, but the handling costs have gone up because we didn't need handlers before.
But they were very responsive.
Oh yeah.
You know, when we needed them, they were good to
So
use.
we do recommend Skyplan. That's who we use. They're out of Calgary. We dealt with two different United States handlers, and neither one of them, one didn't want our business, and the other was really not practical for a small piston-powered type flight. Visa and invitation, very important. Yes, you need a visa. It also has to have an invitation. There's different ways of getting them. I think Red Star, based on our performance, they did great. They got us at what we needed when we needed it. It's pretty expensive. It's about $450 just for that. But if you get a 3-year, I'm still working off my 3 years visa and invitation. So it gives you some flexibility if you go for like a 60-day visa or something. And then this season, like I do not personally recommend going in the fall to Russia. The weather's too cruddy. But so Red Star is what we recommend on that. Circumpolar is Tandy. The airmen went with them. I don't know who else can provide that level of success that Tandy can. You might end up spinning your wheels with somebody else that just says that. Insurance is required. I got a territorial rider myself through a VEMCO because I have a VEMCO policy. Nobody ever asked me for my insurance, but I have insurance on everything forever, even when it wasn't required up here. So that's my personal opinion on that. The Russians did ask us, for paperwork. They asked for like the registration, and they wanted my original registration, but I had a copy in my binder, so I just gave them that. They said they'd give it back. I never got it back, but I didn't have to worry about it because it was a copy, that sort of thing. So, and then customs in Nome use EAPS, which you need to register first for EAPS and then file your manifest both ways. It's pretty cut and dry, and then the port director up there, Elmer Johnson, he's got that information, and then it's flexible after that, but you got to file via EAPS with customs.
So you were able to file the EAPAs coming back from Russia via the internet?
filed it before we left. And you can do that, yeah, it's pretty open. I don't wanna speak for customs service, but if you do your manifest, you have to identify when, where, and how, and then after that, it's a phone call. To update it if you're stuck over there or something, you're still on file.
Weather goes down,
Yeah.
or whatever. Cool.
How about Wi-Fi?
I'm sorry?
How about Wi-Fi when you're there?
Uh,
There's a lot of-
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
And that's Russia.
Yeah, I mean, they used to have an internet cafe in Provideniya, they don't any longer, so it's hard to say.
So there's the map that folks like Felix McGuire and D. Hansen were instrumental in, and Mr. McNone probably had some input on that too, way back when, of getting that Russian chart done on Provideniya, the airway. Just an aside there. So timelines, we'll talk about those real quick, and we have timeline written out here, the handouts and stuff we can give out. But if you don't have a passport, or if it expires before the end of 2019, you need to get one as soon as you can. They are partially based on how much you're willing to pay to get one too, but $110 is basically you get one. And then you need your passport before you can get your visa and your Chukotka border permit through Tandy. Well, the visa is through Red Star, but the Chukotka border permit is through Circumpolar Expeditions, who deals directly with the folks over there and security in the Russian Far East. The visa application, I found it to be really intrusive. I guess I gotta watch my words on that a little bit. But it was highly detailed. I was in the military. It asked me if I was in a war. It asked me for my specialty, that kind of stuff, which I've never had to do before with Russian visas in the past. So, there's more information needed, and so just be prepared for that.
So I might mention that I talked with Red Star this morning, and told them we were doing this presentation, they know that you're going to be doing this, they can process the passport for you, they're certified to do a US passport, they will do the Russian visa, it has to be online, it didn't used to have to be, so you have to go online and do it. And if you're going to be doing that, there's some questions in there that besides, your first grade teacher's maiden name, you have to answer, not stuff like that, but there's some other detailed ones that I would provide for you, because they'll ask you where we're gonna stay, and this and this and that. So let me know, and I can help you go through that kind of thing, so.
And just FYI, at the Valdez Air Show, we did his online and actually got it to work.
Before the flight started, yeah.
So could you explain just what it means to be a closed area, the Chukotka?
It's restricted for travel. So
Even
don't
if
have
you were, I understand, even if you're a Russian nationalist, you need a border permit to move about that area.
And the reason for that is because how close they are to the USA. Okay, so it's a border because they had all that military there. So Russians themselves have to apply for that permission as well. So
Very sensitive. Yeah.
So 60 days is the kind of arena there for the border permit. That's the longest of anything there. This proposed trip is less than 4 months off now, so the timeline shows it that basically first part of April, you need to have your passport in place to make it work at all. A couple other items on here, radio licenses are needed. Of course, PIC needs medical, not basic med, and then insurance is eventually required. Flight permissions, basically you get with SkyPlan, and they have a registration process too, which I've got, and I've been talking to SkyPlan. Their senior manager for international travel wants to coordinate with each of you individually, essentially on the process. We could call them night or day, or they would call us night or day, and there's always changes and stuff going on. Many things happen, weather delays, that sort of thing. And they were always there, just like Tandy was too. I called her one time. More than one time, but it's like, hey, we need to change this thing a lot. But, so, and then there is customs forms like general declaration. They make a big deal about that. Nothing that's unfamiliar with somebody that's been there before, but it's just, we want to make sure we're covering all the bases with you for starters, and it'll become more clear as we go along. Yes, sir?
On the radio licenses, one for the plane radio license and a personal
Yes.
operator?
And the license for the airplane is $170. And mine expired, I got one in 2007 because we were heading over there in 2007, but it expired in 2017, so I had to buy another one. Anyway, just an aside on that is there is a lot of costs.
So you said pilot needs a regular license?
Yes,
Was that general radio telephone one from,
correct.
okay, it's free, I think it used to be.
I dug out and found mine. So I
Remember like 50 years ago, it's still good?
did. Yeah. Come on now.
From the 70s anyway.
Anyway,
FCC radio license
yes,
for the aircraft?
right. Okay, so really think hard about making a commitment decision in your own mind and letting Tandy know. We're gonna have access to the email that folks have signed up around here. If you wanna opt out, if we send you something and you wanna opt out, just send it back and say opt out or whatever. But with a group this large that has this kind of interest, we don't want anybody to get missed if you are interested in going.
Another question?
Is it possible to bring a UK passenger on?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay.
Well,
That
Oops.
UK passport?
Yeah.
Okay, so to get a Russian visa, you have to get the Russian visa in the country of the passport now. We used to be able to do that. But what they'll need is a letter of invitation, and we can arrange that with Red Star to send it and all of that, so.
great question.
Yeah, good question.
Yes, it's possible. Yeah, it's gonna take some work.
Another question, Petra?
What about experimental airplanes? Does it have to be a certificated US built? Because we had that issue in 2000.
I believe it needs to be certificated. That's what I believe. I haven't looked up the reg on that, but I know that there's problems in the past with trying to get an experimental over, and maybe Mr. Pernone doesn't, but
What was that?
the experimentals, I haven't seen an experimental get over there.
When I was in Kiev, they had these experimentals that they made themselves, but it was restricted. There was no cross-country flying in those days for private people. You could take off and land at your own airport. So there were some.
Okay.
But whether they'll accept experimental from the US is the question.
I have just a deep little thought about seeing some kind of reg in the AIP, Russian AIP, that there's no restricted aircraft, I can tell you that for sure. And experimental would take some research, but I haven't seen it. I couldn't say for sure.
We'll look into it.
Is you mentioned the medical, the new self-medical, is that okay for that?
No,
They said
unfortunately,
that
no.
is not valid outside the United States.
Correct. Yes, sir?
On the money aspect, I think it's my understanding that they don't allow any US money over there, right? Don't we need to get rubles before we go from our bank or whatever? Correct? Okay, that's good. That's a good answer.
No. He's hesitating. Yeah, they want US money.
Right,
Okay,
sure.
they do want that. Now, there's a bank in Provideniya where you can take US money and exchange it for rubles. I wouldn't suggest, we talk about not bringing a whole bunch of money in. And with the US, if you take more than $10,000 out, you have to report with the US.
Right, and Jandy,
Yeah.
what's the policy over there for freezing things to make things go smoother? In a lot of foreign countries that works, a lot of some you shouldn't do it.
You're gonna have a local guide with you the entire time
Okay,
and let them advise you on that,
okay.
yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it with the border guard.
No.
They look like Canadian mounted police on steroids.
So individual costs will vary, not all inclusive, rather, we'll go through some of it here, I mean, I know we're running out of time. That, on the right there, that lady there, and the lady in the Casa booth there, that's what they did, is they figured up all our costs, and then they gave us the receipt, that sort of thing, but we didn't have to fork out any money like, was their experience in the past. Not immediately, anyway. Yes?
I don't wanna crash your program, but the business about money came up, and I thought you might be interested in hearing this. One of our people, when we were getting ready to leave, was held in the terminal, and we were told we could leave, we're just supposed to leave him there. Found out that he had $500 American money more in his possession coming out than he had going in. I won't get through the whole incident, I can tell you that privately, but that's another story. But it took a little while to get him out of there, and if you're going over there, just be real careful. Remember, you're dealing with the Russians. They're paranoia and rampant, and if they think that you're doing something, or you are doing something that's not on the level, they're going to net it for it.
I totally agree, and
Probably hasn't changed in 25 years.
I don't
It
think
hasn't
it's changed.
changed.
That's why
That's an excellent point.
That's why we're
Yes.
emphasizing, play this straight, be good citizens, be good examples, and if they want to look in your inspection cover, take them off, at least work with them. Say, hey, look in here or something. Don't just say, you can't do that, because that may go badly. So anyway, these costs, I haven't got them all lined out for you tonight, and it's probably good that I don't. But the airmen lobbied years ago, and there was just a quickie on that, is that the air traffic fees were based on 747 type airplanes way back when. Airmen got involved, AOPA got involved, the state got involved, and got it more realistic as far as 100 kilometers per metric ton. So take it down from 50 metric tons. This little airplane of ours was just about 2,300 pounds. So that's really what they charge. There's air traffic fees. They're probably 3 times more than what you pay in your gasoline taxes. You can see here, those are pretty current. About 19 cents per federal. Less than 5 cents per state. And I know the airmen have talked about, and others up here have talked about increasing that as a way out to support the airports. And then like Merrill Field charges another 8 cents on top of that. So there's, but it still doesn't compare with the air traffic fees, on the other side, and the amount that you end up paying.
So did you have to buy gas in Russia?
No. But they don't have any gas over there, no avgas available, easily available.
Nowhere, or at least
I'm sorry?
nowhere in this where we're flying.
Anywhere that I know of, although they're selling Cirruses in Moscow. I'm not sure what where they're getting the gas, but over the years there's been barges that have been freighted in. There's people that bring in their barrels of gas. Bering Air would take as much gas as they can get in their Navajo for you for $6,000 if you want to do it that way. But if you tanker your gas, this is just a Provideniya. It's 270 nautical miles from Nome. So just figure that in your flight plans and watch the wind. There is, what we want to do this year is bring back some car gas, because you might want to mention that a little bit.
Well, years ago, I think there was probably some pretty poor gas when the military their presence was there. I mean, there was poor gas probably. Now, a lot of those Russians are buying used vehicles from Japan because of Japan's requirements to export vehicles when they have so many miles. So the Russians are buying those up, and many of those need, good grade, high grade fuel. So now they have higher grade fuels and would probably work great in a 182. But that would be up to you whether your airplane is legal to do that or whatever you want to do. But in case of an emergency, I feel that their high grade gasoline would work great.
So are you saying there is car gas available?
Yes.
Yes,
right in Provideniya. We never, like I say, we carried our own fuel, so we didn't have to do that. But we've talked to different people. Dwayne King has told us how they would stash gas in the little shack there and different things. And so there are possibilities for gas.
Okay, so getting back to costs in general here, these air traffic and handling fees, I'd say it's almost 3 times what the Russians are charging, but you're going through a couple of flight plan handlers, in other words, Canadians and then Russians. So there is other sources out there. I like to stick with something that's successful and works. These guys, Skyplan did. I mean, that's your decision on who you're gonna go with, but you know, for a group, I would recommend you all stay with the same company, just because it gets more and more complicated when, if things go bad, communication-wise, that sort of thing. If one person goes through the Egyptians, let's say, who does this kind of work too, there's a language barrier there with those folks, I would say.
Marshall, it's 6:32, so we need to
Okay,
finish up some stuff.
okay, we'll go through here real quick, and I apologize, and for this is being live streamed too, so I want to recognize the people that are watching from lower 48. Thank you very much. Russian rubles, yeah, you got to bring some, but you can change it over there. The other part of it is they want crisp bills, and you won't need that much. Chukotka border permit through Tandy, expect about $100. Passport, $110. The 3-year visa is about, and the invitation, about $450. We used about $1,400 worth of fuel. Then we got, there's a million other things like your subscription if you want to put in all those costs for your locator device, your navigation aid. That's up to you. Our favorite low-cost motel burned down, so
Dang.
that's the Polar. I mean, I was up there last year, and it's just a empty lot now. I mean, they have nothing left of that place.
Yeah, but that's a no, right?
That's
That's
it, no.
no.
Yeah, I like Pop-Tarts, but that's not my only emergency gear, so think about that. Custom decals, $27.50. We talked about the radio station license, local services, guides, translator, lodging, food, all for $600 for 4 nights, or 3 nights, 4 days. I might mention on the food, at one point over there, they said, we're having cheeseburgers tonight, and what the cheeseburgers was a bun, cheese, onion, and herring. So,
Hey, sounds good.
Love it.
And these are approximate.
yeah, they're all approximate. They're going to vary. I mean, your insurance company is going to have to make a decision, about those type of fees and all that. So, as Tandy's mentioned, it's once in a lifetime bucket type thing. We try to show them mutual respect, no attitudes. I mean, we carry that across anyway. We've been around a long time. We always wanted to go to Russia, so it's a privilege to get over there after the Iron Curtain was there for so long. We're neighbors, relatives. Here's our hugger. He did great with that over there. There's some other things. It is good. Air tourism really helps in this day and age. Helping out, buying your gas along the way. And I think weather is going to be pretty much as far as it stands right now, there's available for weather. And I wouldn't hesitate, Andy, I wouldn't hesitate to call flight service in Alaska either and get the latest. You can go on the AVCAMs, and you can get on the map that we've got a link to the AVCAMs. The AVCAM program has on their map Provideniya and Najer. You just click over them when they're available. But remember, they're only Sunday through Thursday. Sunday through Thursday for Provideniya. It's 24/7 at Najer. But you don't get any weather out of Provideniya till noon. So they have a TAF and that sort of thing, which is good. And then, the adventure goes on and on. We got dreams, going to China. The Airmen in years past wanted to go to Japan. That was a laudable thing too. It's a long way, any of those places. We would not feel comfortable without showing you the State Department. I mean, you can research the State Department on your own, but this is the latest travel advisory I know about. Did you want to handle that?
No?
Anyway, that video there, that's from President Putin's new Sarmat ballistic missile, and that's Lake Okeechobee over there. But anyway, I wouldn't let that influence you too much. But the State Department does say to exercise increased caution due to terrorism, harassment, the arbitrary enforcement of local laws. Some areas have increased risks. So I mean, you know, it's an adventure, and you know, you need to be willing to take a certain amount of risk. That's what you have to decide individually, passengers and PICs, and how you want to deal with that. Last words on that?
No. But remember, we're dealing with local people, as long as we get the other permissions, so.
I think there's a lot to that, you know.
Yes,
They say
absolutely.
Moscow is 8,000 miles that way, we're neighbors. So
Mhm.
that means a lot. Yes?
So I guess I didn't realize Chukotka was a closed area. But what are the possibilities in Chukotka or some neighboring non-closed area for, you get a 30-day visa, go to Provideniya and pass customs. Is it possible to go over there and land off airport and just kind of sightsee yourself in big areas?
Their idea of VFR is not that advanced for us. I mean, what you're talking about almost is what they do with their helicopters, but that's something that was of interest 20 years ago. It's still of interest, you know, and it's like just getting off the VFR flyway was kind of like a major accomplishment. So I would say landing off airport, you know, I go way back, there's people, polar bear hunters and all that they didn't worry about any of these permissions and stuff way back when. But that was a different time. They got radar, they got good radar now. The potential for that, more power to you if you could get it done, but it would be a real jump to do that. The air traffic people don't even, I mean, that's not the way they think about these aircraft.
Okay, but there's not one single hard, regulation that they have or something that strictly forbids that. It's just, sounds like someone would have
Well,
a pretty tough time taking it.
their airspace, they keep on going more and more towards what they'd like to have as, you know, what Dan was talking about is a little bit more lenient. But I mean, it's like, even the Russians have to report, even on the helicopters, they have to make position reports and they can't get off their flight plans.
Are you talking, excuse me, I just want to understand your question. Are you talking about landing in Provideniya and then after flying around for 30 days in your plane? Is
Yeah,
that is that what you're talking? No. No.
Let me comment. In America, if there's no rule against it, you can usually do it. That's not the way it is over there. Over there, if there's anything that you want to do, there has to be a rule for you to do it. If there's no rule for you to do it, you can't do it.
Another
And
question
also,
in the back
Let
corner?
me make another question, and to everybody involved here, I'd like to say thank you for your attention to staying this long. We really tried to condense this thing, but anyway, you know, as far as the operations go, the VFR type operations, the rules right now say that if you're gonna, unless you're on Bravo 369, you need a navigator on board, period. Now, we got dispensation to go to a nodger, which we're not gonna do because of some other reasons, but even to get to a nodger, you're supposed to have a Russian navigator who is basically a translator for the air traffic. Now, luckily, things are changing too because the Nodger Center, they speak English. La Vrincha Tower, most of the time, you couldn't even use them because they didn't have an English-speaking controller there. So, you know, hey, Bernie, you got a question?
I was over there in '92, and I'll tell you, I was on the ground with the dog team, and they've got mobile radar, old gulag prison camps, all over that place. I was in trouble once, and there's a lot of things they don't want us to see.
Right.
And they have the capability, and I'm not that kind of a technical person, but I know I had some walrus hunters who were taking me by boat, and we had to get from one point to another, and if we didn't get in that time period, we had to call the authorities and say, hey, we're stuck here. They're watching the hunters in their little boats, so they would get you right away, so I wouldn't do it.
Doing it, you know, trying to sneak my way through.
Well, people do, you know, people.
The day will come, I think the day will come when we'll have that availability. The Chinese are developing more and more VFR and general aviation, and I think the Russians want to play also. It's just the feeling I get. And those days are coming, but they're not here yet.
Okay.
Right now, if you're not using Bravo 369, you would need a navigator.
So, what's, there apparently is a barrier to going on to Niger?
Well, we got a letter of invite, basically, from Magadan saying we could, but we've been denied before, too, to go to Niger.
It's just not working out logistically. I've got my airplanes in heavy maintenance right now, so it's just, I don't even know if it's gonna be ready in time to go. I mean, I'm just saying that we're not gonna be able to do all that work to coordinate a flight to a Niger. It's plenty this year probably to go to Provideniya.
With a group, I'm guessing.
And you know, we can't leave it alone. That's been my thought on it. I've talked to Tandy about that too, is that once you get this, you know, idea of going over there, it's so close, you know, so some personalities just want to explore, you know, one step at a time.
But the day will come, I think.
Yeah.
We've got
Yes.
time for.
Okay, Sven?
So I've got a couple of comments. For those of you who know me, I wear several hats. One here at the Airmen, my other hat is I sell new Cessna airplanes. So the answer to the question about the avgas in Western Russia is Cessna sold a bunch of 172s, St. Petersburg Flight School, about 50, 60 airplanes. The avgas is trucked in from Finland.
Okay.
That's the answer to that question. Being a non-US passport holder myself, I'm European, I follow some of the aviation stuff that's going on in Europe. Parallel to your trip, I just looked it up. From the 18th to the 22nd of June, there will be a whole bunch of Germans in Halibut Cove. They are part of a travel group by a German organization. It's a cross between the Airmen and Flying Magazine. So they've got a publication and they've got members, and they're doing a member fly out. All the piston airplanes are leaving Germany and flying westbound through northern Canada and coming all the way to Homer and then to Halibut Cove. The Jet A burning airplanes are going the eastbound route through Russia and through Provideniya and Nome, and they're all going to be meeting the avgas burning airplanes and the Jet A burning airplanes. All these people are going to meet in Halibut Cove from the 18th to the 22nd of June this year.
Cool.
So if you can't go there, but you want to talk to people who've just done it, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they'll appreciate the Airmen's invasion, but they're obviously going to be there telling their story about what they've experienced and so on. So if you end up not going, that's maybe the place to go and find out what other groups have.
That's good.
That's good. The more the merrier.
I hope they have a safe flight. And but the Pistons are not going into Russia, right?
Because of the lack of avgas.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, I think they could if they chose to at least get their feet wet.
So I guess the message is that there are GA folks in other countries, in other continents that are having the same dream that we are, and I think it's also important to connect with them to build this base of knowledge and experience and connections.
Excellent.
Yeah, that is
Great.
excellent. We probably ought to wrap it up. We'll be available. We've gone way over time. Oscar, sorry. But John, thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.